Shut up, compressor. Hey everyone, Matt here with Duke's Models, and welcome to another round of questions and answers and rants. So this ended up being a lot more fun than I thought it would be last night, and since we've still got this heat dome sitting over Central Texas for the next several days, I figure this might be a good way to pass at least some of the time while I'm waiting for things to cool down so I can get back to the intruder. So let's get into it. Okay, this first question comes from YouTube comments, and it is, why do you swear so much? It is really not necessary and very off-putting. Quite frankly, I swear because I fucking can. It's my channel, I can do what I want, and I honestly find it just sort of natural. That's it. You know, I could go on and on about how there are studies that show that people who swear or use expletives or blue language or whatever stupid-ass word you want to use for it, tend to be more honest, tend to be more intelligent, tend to have better command of language, all kinds of things. There are even studies that prove that saying fuck actually increases your pain tolerance, which is probably why when you smash your thumb with a hammer or drop a nice sharp PE shear on your foot and you say fuck, it's almost like an, automatic response. It's your body jacking up that pain tolerance. So there are all kinds of reasons for it. But frankly, it's because I can. I want to. It feels more familiar, and it's a nice break from the rest of society. I would also add that, in my experience, the people who tend to get really huffy about expletives also tend to have some pretty, shitty opinions about other things in life. And it's really off-putting to be tut-tutted about things like words when there are so many other just really, really bad, shitty things happening in the world that honestly merit a lot more concern than somebody using certain syllables arranged certain ways on fucking YouTube videos. So, that's that. Okay, let's talk about gratitude. Now, generally, I'm a big fan of gratitude. I'm a big fan of being thankful for the things that we have in this life. The stuff, the relationships, the opportunities, the air conditioner in the garage, even though it's cycling off right now because it's overheating because it's so fucking hot. I'm generally a big fan of keeping track of what we had to be grateful for, and I think that's a big part of what makes you a good person, is realizing that and acknowledging that. That's not what this is. This is the phenomenon that whenever a new kit comes out, particularly a kit of a maybe undercovered subject or a subject that hasn't been covered, and it's inevitably disappointing. There we go, cycling back on. It hasn't been covered particularly well, and it comes out, and it's inevitably a disappointment in some form or fashion. Maybe it's just missing details, like the Zvezda, blah blah blah. It's a fucking hard name to say. The Zvezda Mi-24 Hind that just came out with just no details on the fuselage, no rivets, and it's a nice, chunky, ugly fucking helicopter, and they just clean sheeted it, basically. That is disappointing. When somebody releases a kit and the cockpit details are all wrong, or the shape is wrong, or the accuracy is off, or things just don't fit, or stuff is just really sloppily done and seems rushed. Inevitably on Facebook, on forums, on places where modelers congregate, you will inevitably, without fail, hear, just be grateful that the kit even exists. Just be grateful that they bestowed this plastic in a box upon us. Bullshit. Just straight total bullshit. That is not how this works. This is honestly, to be completely blunt and cold about it, this is a business transaction. There is a company trying to meet a customer demand. They make a product, they sell the product, we buy the product. If we are not happy with the product, we are totally allowed to voice our displeasure. Have you ever read movie reviews? Have you ever read car reviews? Have you ever read any reviews on Amazon of any product ever made? We are allowed to have expectations of a certain level of detail, a certain level of engineering, and a certain level of quality. And when those aren't met, we are allowed to voice them. And honestly, manufacturers should be paying more attention to that, because a lot of them, over the years, tend to get pretty shitty reputations because they disregard that kind of a thing. Which could be everything from Trumpeter showing off the CADs of whatever's coming out, and everyone's saying, whoa, 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 the cockpit is like 6 feet wide, what the fuck? But by the time they've done that, they're so far down the path, they just say fuck it and release it, and the whole world basically just has to deal with it forever after that. Whereas there are other companies that catch these things and try to take action. Great Wall Hobby, when they released their F-15, I think it was the B, got some of the shapes wrong on the fuselage. And they ended up going back and retooling it to make it more accurate. And they actually, I'm not sure how it worked because I didn't get one of the Bs, but from what I understand, they literally refunded or sent people replacement sprues for the fuselage and the parts that were fucked up. Cool, good on them. That's awesome. That is the kind of relationship I'd like to see more of in this hobby, of companies actually standing behind their products as opposed to saying, just be grateful that you're getting anything at all, because they're out there for, they want the sales, they want the money. Do a better job if you want to sell more of them. Okay, do I still have any of the kits I built when I was a kid? The answer is yes, I actually do. I have one here with me in the house, and it is an old Tamiya Panzer IV, which I think was the first thing I ever did any sort of modeling type work on. It's not great, but it's here, and it's a tough little thing that's kind of withstood a lot of punishment over the years, so sure, it gets to keep, it gets to ride along. The bulk of my survivors from when I was a kid, a teenager, whatever, they actually reside out in Arizona where my parents retired to, and I got to see them for the first time in years, last year, and I wouldn't say they hold up. I think they were pretty decent for what I could pull off at the time, but it's funny, the years are cruel to those things, and over time, I was a big user of super glue back then, a lot of those joints have become very brittle, so it's I have I think it's an Academy P47N, and the gear doors have fallen off, the windscreen has fallen off, I believe one of the stabilizers has kind of slipped out of its moorings. There is a very dusty Tamiya CVN 65 Enterprise with not great painted aircraft on it. Let's see, what else is there? There's a Spitfire 14, that's an Academy. There's a Hasegawa Corsair 2, and a few things of that nature. I wouldn't say any of them are particularly good. I'm going to see if I can find photos kind of stuck wherever and kind of overlay them with this so y'all can see what they look like. It was fun to see them and fun to kind of realize how far I've come since then. But I don't honestly have any real particular attachment to them. For me, it was more the experience of working on them as a kid, not the final finished product. So, okay, so this next one's a tricky one, and just a caveat up front, I'm just operating off of theory and conjecture based on kind of the very little that we know. But the question is, why are there so few women in this hobby, and why are the ones who are in it so damn good? So, my guess, it's actually probably a couple of different factors. So first of all, I think there's just a lack of subject matter that interests women as much as it interests men. When you think about what exists in this hobby that mostly gets built, and it's military aircraft, military vehicles, military naval vessels. You don't see a lot of civilian stuff. You don't see a lot of other options out there in terms of representing things in scale miniature. And so, just in my personal experience, women aren't really as interested in P-51 Mustangs and Tiger tanks and Roman Legionnaires, things like that. So I think there's a subject matter gap that just kind of keeps them away to an extent. I think another factor is, I would say probably for most of us in this hobby, it was kind of, to some extent, passed down to us by some sort of older male relative at some point. I know that my dad is the one who got me my first model kit and kind of walked me through building it, even though he says he built models as a kid. He didn't build any when I was a kid, so I don't know, but it still kind of came to me through him. And I think that's probably a pretty common story. And I think when I was growing up, that there was much more of a gender segregation between what you played with and what hobbies you got into. So boys played with G.I. Joes and Transformers, and they built models, and they played baseball and whatnot. Girls played with Barbie dolls and Cabbage Patch dolls, and watched She-Ra, and joined the Girl Scouts, and played hopscotch. You know, it was a very segregated, gender-based mode of play. And so I think a lot of it is just, at least at the age that we're at, where people are coming back into the hobby, or where we have maybe the leisure time and the disposable resources to throw at a hobby, there's that certain pull to come back to this thing that we did as a kid, this thing that we can maybe do a bit more properly now, and that's just not there for women, because back then things were different. I think it's kind of a similar thing to, like, you know, I know that in the world of computers and IT, it's changing, but there has historically been a massive gap in, like, getting girls into coding and into software development and, you know, cloud engineering and security, you know, cybersecurity and things like that. Again, it is changing, but going back historically, that was not something girls did, and it wasn't even thought about. You know, again, that very segregated interest model. But that is changing. So I think modeling, there's a decent chance it changes as well. Like, I know that you know, my daughter's been out here at the bench spraying things with an airbrush, and she loves the airbrush. She's a bit iffy on the subjects, but, you know, she likes throwing paint around in an atomized form. So who's to say where it goes from here? I think we might see more women getting into it over the years. We might not. I'm not an expert on that prediction. Now, as far as why the ones who are in it are so good, I think it's a matter of it's self-selecting. I've always said this is, you know, like a lot of hobbies, this is a hobby that you can't force somebody into. They have to be drawn into it. You can expose somebody to it, but you can't force somebody to become a modeler. If they either have the bug or they don't. And I think the women who are in it have the bug. And for whatever reason, however they were exposed to it as a kid or whatnot, yeah, they basically, it's like the best of the best have found their way into it and stuck with it. And I've noticed a lot of them tend to focus on things like figure painting, and some of the work I've seen them do is just, you watch them do it on video and it still doesn't make sense. And I wonder if there are maybe other activities that they practiced growing up that prime them to do things in certain ways, maybe more naturally or better than, you know, boys growing up at the same time. So again, complete conjecture, complete wild ass guessing on my part, but I wonder if something like, you know, painting nails and doing nail art lends itself and transfers very well to painting tiny intricate details on figures. Could be, I don't know, but I think it is something I would love to see somebody actually like study in depth. It's a fun little mystery to ponder. Okay, so that wraps up another fun volley of answers and rants. Hope y'all are enjoying these as much as I am. They're a blast to do. We may do one or two more of these, again, depending on how much the heat kind of drags on. I am really, really fucking ready for a cold front. So, thanks for listening, and I believe it was it Frank who requested that I end this with, go fuck yourself. So, go fuck yourself.